Ween, White Pepper, right now on States and Kingdoms. Welcome back to States and Kingdoms. Today we're talking about Ween's album, White Pepper, from 2000. 2000.
Early 2000.
Early 2000.
May of 2000.
Right. Mid 2000.
I was a young whippersnapper. And this is an important album for me.
Me too.
No, just for me. And, we were talking about this the other day. Not you. Me, I was talking on the camera. Around that time, like 2000, it was really interesting. There's still a lot of good music around that time. It really was.
Oh, yeah.
And, I was, however old I was, about 15. Like, all the new bands I was listening to were all heavy. I don't mean fat. I mean, like, they were
obese.
No, but I mean, like, I was still listening to Pantera. That summer I went to the summer Sanitarium tour, Metallica, Slayer, Sepultura. That pretty much did it.
Yeah.
For me wanting to find other music. But at the same time, I was listening to...
Enough.
I was listening to, the Beach Boys and all that stuff was, I had been listening to Jimi Hendrix and all that classic rock. And I was looking for something new that was connected to that that wasn't, I don't know, I guess I was being very picky.
Yes, you were.
And I guess particularly American music, because obviously, Blur was around, you were listening to that. I like that. But there was nothing new that was not heavy that really grabbed my attention.
Right, there was a hole in your heart.
Until this. And I'd heard of Ween.
I had heard of Ween in high school, but yeah, I never really listened to them until you started listening to them.
I went to Mr. Cheapo's, and I just saw this as a promotional copy, so I'm not sure when this was. Probably pretty early.
Yeah.
In 2000. And I just loved it. It was really everything I was looking for. It was Beatley, but not like smack you over the head Beatley,
Yeah, like Oasis.
Well, kinda. I mean, in retrospect or current spect,
Respect.
Yeah, it is Beatley, but it's also Oranges and Lemons, non-such XTC.
Yeah.
It has some stylistic jumps that, they do so well, but not as many. I mean, it's really very focused. It's very Beatle-esque rock and roll.
Yeah.
And
it's interesting, listening to it again more in depth recently. I was just thinking about it in terms of being the same year that XTC's Apple Venus Volume 1 came out. And I never really made that connection before because I didn't listen to them exactly at the same time. But I don't know, it's just interesting that there's definitely similarities there that I'd never really, I don't know why, I never really put them together before.
Yeah, it's just it's kind of like XTC that, especially that time, XTC at that time. The Beatles are, I mean, clearly present in Andy Partridge's songs, but there's so much else in there that it doesn't become like overpowering, or you feel like they're just doing like a pastiche or something like that, or
pistachio.
I knew you were gonna say that. Cornball. Exactly where I'm at. Flutes of Chi. Grabbed me immediately. These are
Back to Basin.
No, but I mean, like, the opening songs on this album.
Yeah, this is a strong record.
I mean, instantly.
Yeah.
I was sold.
There's no low points. The album it gets going right off the bat, and it's just like overload of melody and rhythm, and always kind of interesting, yet not jokey lyrics. It's actually quite serious. There isn't. There's a few moments, but there isn't like a. I'm trying to trying to think of like a good example from like another album, but.
Well, there's no like piss up a rope.
This album just feels elevated and like very cool.
It's interesting. If you want to compare it to their other albums, actually my favorite Ween album is the Mollusk. It's one of my favorite albums of anyone's. You know, it's not the first time they had kind of focused in on one, you know, sort of one style. Obviously, the country album would be that, if nothing else. Which was actually the next album I got. I don't know why.
Bounced around a little.
But whatever.
We do that.
You know, it's like pre-internet kind of stuff. I didn't look things up on the internet.
Right.
I just bought whatever I found.
Yeah.
And whatever.
They get it.
Yeah. To me, exactly where I'm at, and several other songs still carry some of that, the Mollusk magic. You know, there are a couple. Obviously, there's the Calypso of Bananas and Blow, which is you know, a very typical Ween title.
Somehow, I don't consider that song like jokey.
Their lyrics, their music can definitely have a humor. It can have absurdity. It can have, instead of universal, sort of universal lyrics, very individual, particular lyrics. Something that, you know, means something maybe to them. A lot of songwriters shy away from those things. Yeah. You know, because they may not mean anything. So Ween has a great way of making it mean something in songs.
Yeah, a lot of narrative. You know, a lot of like character-led songs. Spotify obviously feels strongly that Ween and Beck are very close together. Well,
obviously they cross over in some ways.
There's, you know, more. At least they kept linking this album with The Information.
Yeah,
basically.
I don't really see that
like exclusively.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are areas musically where I can see the two of them being in the same area. Lyrically, they're very different, though. I don't really.
Their approach is
completely different. Ween is not nearly as artsy. It's a little more genuine. Yeah. Although I don't mean to say that because, you know, obviously I love Beck.
Ween's lyrics are personal. They're personal to the point of not making any sense to anyone else at times. You know, Beck's lyrics are impersonal. You know, they have his approach of a sort of collage and you know, almost like sampling folk tradition.
And Ween is just like straightforward, awesome songwriting. There's some beautiful songs on this album, especially Back to Basin. I've always loved. This is just a knockdown, gorgeous song.
A lot of these songs carry with them everything they'd kind of done in the past. You know, there's some pedal steel. There's a really pretty kind of country ballad sound to Back to Basin, to
She's My Baby.
To She's My Baby. And that song in particular does that kind of sounds like a late 80s XTC song to me.
Yeah.
With a few changes that would be like something Andy Partridge could have written. There's, you know, the stroke race, there's the kind of Motorheady sound to that. The Grobe, which, I mean, you know, this is also kind of an aside, but we were supposed to see Ween.
Oh yeah, good story.
Not a good story. We were supposed to see Ween and Queens of the Stone Age at this time.
Right around this time.
And it doesn't matter. We didn't go. We missed them.
We didn't go. We were not able to go. And it was one of the greatest regrets of our joint lives.
But I always think this album had a big impact on Josh Homme. I think this was obviously not just this one, but
he heard this all the time. Yeah.
The Grobe sounds like it could be on Songs for the Deaf.
Yeah.
You know, or Rated R.
Yeah.
You know, either one. This album is, it's not a melange. It's not I don't look at it as like a stew or whatever you want to, you know.
Melange à trois.
It's just, because honestly, you know, if you listen to 60s, 70s music, it's not strange for people to kind of have more than one style that they play. Obviously, bands we talk about all the time. So it's not strange to hear someone going from this to like a calypso type song to a more, maybe you could say, hard rock song, to then, you know, it really doesn't.
Have all those influences,
a country ballad.
All that stuff in you, it's just natural that you're gonna write songs and it's all gonna just kind of come out and fall where it may.
It seemed very natural to me. It's still, and what I'm saying is it is very natural. This album, you know, I love Chocolate and Cheese. I think that's absolutely brilliant. It's a masterpiece. Really, it's a masterpiece. But you know, this is just a great rock album.
Yeah.
You know, like there's no sort of Mexican folk song. There's no, there are no electronic-y songs.
No.
Which no spinal meningitis, no
Right.
HIV song or anything like that. It's a very like mainstream.
It is.
But carrying all of their style and lyrical style as well. It's just a perfect rock album. Also, Ice Castles. I just saw Ice Castles. Such a beautiful song.
It is a beautiful song.
It is beautiful and perfect placement.
I
right
love
before Back to
instrumentals.
Basin.
I love instrumentals, and you don't get that enough these days.
Yeah.
Not like the super current album on this. Yeah.
23 years ago. I can't find any flaws in this
No,
album.
it's such a good record. It's just comfortable too. It feels, it's like familiar, and it feels good listening to it now after, having listened to it so much. And it's just, I don't know, I'm always impressed by Dean and Gene.
And actually, it works that there isn't, Pandy Fackler is probably about as close as it gets, to, them maybe being a little tongue-in-cheek, kind of Steely Dan, maybe a little more cocktail loungy, although it almost turns into Western swing at the end.
Yeah.
But, it works being a bit more straightforward, this album. Because, I don't mind the absurdity of their, lyrics.
No, I'm
and
happy with all of it.
their whimsy. But this is such a graceful album. It really is.
Thank you so much for watching our discussion of White Pepper. Please let us know what you think of this album in the comments. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to States and Kingdoms. We'll see you next time.